Alright guys, doing our next installment here, Matthew 5, the Sermon on the Mount. And last we had finished off, we were talking about kind of the chronological development of Christian, starting off poor in spirit, mourning over sin, growing in meekness. We drew the distinction that meekness is not weakness, but meekness is actually a willing putting down of your strength. A perfect example of that is in Matthew 11. Jesus says to become like me, for I am lowly in heart and meek. And we see that that Jesus also, when he was in a situation where he had the ability to remove himself from the persecution, he said, think not that I can't call down all these legions of angels and stuff like that. I mean, he had the ability to repress all of this persecution that was going on, but he chose not to. Jesus is meek. Jesus is not weak. So we need to understand that distinction. But then as that Christian begins to continue to develop, hungering after righteousness, becoming more merciful, pure in heart, peacemaker, and we've talked about all that, and it ultimately culminates in that Christian being persecuted for righteousness' sake. So after this, Jesus now goes on to talk about in 13 what you should do now that you're a Christian. And he says, ye are the salt of the earth, but if the salt have lost its savor, wherewith shall it be salted? It is thenceforth good for nothing, to be cast out and to be trodden under the foot of men. So one of the things that he talked about here is he explains that you are the salt of the earth. Now I've heard all kinds of preaching done on salt, its preserving effects and yada yada and all this, and that's fine, but that's not exactly what he's saying here. He says, if the salt has lost its savor, he's talking about its flavor. The salt has a flavor, and that's what its purpose is. We use it to flavor food. If it would be like you reaching in your cabinet for your flavorless salt, what would be the point? It has no purpose at that point. And by the same token, Jesus is saying that about us. A Christian that has no impact in the lives of those around him is like flavorless salt. He has no purpose. And it kind of dispels this whole myth about closet Christianity. I'm a Christian, but nobody around me knows that. It's a contradiction in terms. So we go on in verse 14. He says, ye are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. And one of the things that I see about this is that, notice that he says the city on a hill doesn't choose to be hidden or anything. He says it can't be hid. So what he's doing is he's drawing this distinction, giving us a kind of a proclamation, and he's saying, you're the salt of the earth, be salt. So he's giving us kind of a command in that sense. But then he gives us another statement in verse 14, and he says, if you're salt, essentially, you can't help but have flavor. He says, you're a city on the hill, it can't be hid. There's nothing that you can do about it. If you're a Christian, you will have impact on those around you. You will be able to be in those types of situations where you can provide light to circumstances. You can provide insight from a godly perspective. So this is kind of what he's talking about. We're not flavorless salt because we choose to be, and we're not a city that's hidden on the top of a hill because we choose to be. It's not something that you even really have any choice in the matter. Salt has flavor. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do men put light under a candle and put it under a bushel, but put it on a candlestick, that it give light unto all that are in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. So he goes on kind of giving some other analogies here, talking about that no one ever takes a light and puts it under a basket or puts it under a bushel. He doesn't take that light and then hide it. The reason why you light a light or you light a candle is to give you light. And by the same token, that we don't really have any control over that. Light gives light. That's what it does. That's its nature. Christians have an impact. That's what they do. It's just who they are. I mean, so one of the things that I kind of wanted to kind of close on this is he says here that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. This is something that, I think many times we kind of get a little off track. We start doing things for our own glory, our own recognition. And to a certain degree, it's nice to receive encouragement from other believers that you're having a positive impact in their life. But understand that in the life of the Christian, the reason why he's doing things is to bring glory to God, is to glorify the Father which is in heaven. It's not for our own personal goals. And as soon as it starts to become our own personal accomplishments, then it's robbing God of his glory. As soon as it starts to become, I'm impacting this many people, or my church has this many people, then it now starts to become more about you and your goals and your accomplishments, and that's not what this is about. So anyway, I want to share that with you guys. All right? God bless.